Hello. Yes, I am back with another project. What project, you may ask? It is this guy here. What is this? This is what they call a bosom buddy. So there is a project that I'm trying to work up my courage to try. And so I'm starting off with a bunch of little projects by Annie. The projects are by a woman, and the name of her company is by Annie. And this is a bosom buddy, and I thought this is pretty cool. I want to try it. And what it is it's a seat belt like cushion, and it was originally made for people who have maybe had a mastectomy or a port put in or something along those lines, just so that the seat belt is not constantly touching them. Because I am like 4 foot nothing, the seat belts usually hit me, right here. And so I thought, well, this is cool, and I always have to have a seatbelt something because it's on me. And this just worked out really nicely. Again, yes, I'm using Tula Pink's fabric. She basically makes fabric just for me. She doesn't know it, but she totally does. And so I am super excited to be using more of her line work collection. I have chosen to use way more fabrics than are suggested, but I mean, you guys already know. And this one is for the hubs. And so his is really, I want to say it's plain, but when he looked at it, he said, is that black glitter? Yes, it is. I thought he wouldn't notice that it had a glitter sheen to it, but I don't know why I thought that, but it does. And, I thought it gave it a little something. I don't know. Now, as you can tell, my husband's is a little more oval than mine. I am a beginner quilter. I was able to make it through this. But this one I found a little more challenging. I think it still came out good enough to gift, but some things definitely went a little different for me. This actually is not the proper size that it's supposed to be, but that's normal. Everything that I make usually comes out a 1/4 of an inch shorter. I don't know why. I guess I take a super generous 1/4 inch. Everybody's 1/4 inch is different, yada, yada, yada. But I think this one, I don't love my husband's as much as I love mine. I had to get kind of warm, and I think I did one for him just so that I could kind of test it. So mine did come out better because I did everything first on his. Shh, don't tell him. But some of the things that I found difficult is really trying to stay a 1/4 inch from right here. Like that's the struggle, trying to stay a 1/4 inch and trying to keep this shape properly. With some practice, I think I can get it. I also did not use Soft and Stable, which is a type of a batting that's got foam to it. I didn't have any. However, when I started making some of my other projects, I did get it. And so I could tell the difference between that and what I did use was the Pellon Foam Flex. Foam Flex is just thicker and it's more sturdy. Soft and Stable is actually softer. And I think that had I used that, I might have had better results because it's thinner, so you can sew through it a little bit easier. But we'll see. I do like the Foam Flex because it's sturdy and it's fun to quilt. Also, if you're doing anything larger than this, please use some spray based it, like spray based. I just pinned this and I was able to quilt, and I didn't get any tucks and puckers and stuff. But there's another project that I did where I did not use some spray basting, and I certainly wish that I had of, because it's just not as smooth. It works, but it's just not as smooth. So I would say that yes, you could probably knock this out as a beginner and gift it. This one is giftable. This one, these ovals here, like, look, you can tell in the back, like, oh no, sis, what did you do? And the top stitching on this one is not as clean as the top stitching is on this one. But again, I'm a beginner. My husband was like, I can't tell anything what's wrong with it. So that's lovely. And this is Velcro, and it's so sturdy. Oh, you hear it's sturdy. I can totally pull on these and jostle them, and he's hard on things, and I feel like he's not going to tear this up. And the measurements, even though mine are slightly off, they still work. You just have to have the courage to stay with your project. So can a beginner do this? Probably so, because I am not the most precise and I'm always zooming through things. So if I can do it, you can certainly do it. It's just, will it come out nice enough for you to feel like you could give away as a gift or want to keep it? And I think so. I think so. This one certainly is a keeper. I can't wait to put it in my car. Okay, guys, so if you want to see me go through and struggle but get it, Tune in, keep watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you know when I post my videos. All right, see you soon. Let's get into this seatbelt cozy, or as they call it, the Bosom Buddy. I'm using Pellon at this point because I don't have the by Annie Soft and Stable, which is what is the recommended use. But hey, I was able to get this from Joann's. Actually, that's incorrect. I actually bought this from a quilt store, but you can get it from Joann's. This is easily accessible. That Soft and Stable, no. Hard to find. My quilt stores didn't have it. This size is okay to pin baste. Anything bigger, I would suggest spray basting. I probably should have spray basted this. That would have been better, but it was okay. So this is my first time working with this, and it's pretty simple, but it's foamy. I put my walking foot on my sewing machine, as you can see, because I was scared because of how thick it is. I wasn't sure how I was going to handle it. Handled it pretty good. So I just went around and sealed the edges. You don't actually have to quilt it every 2 to 3 inches in order for it to behave. But I chose to quilt the back piece. This piece I cut larger than the instructions just because I know that quilting has a tendency to distort fabric and change the sizes of things. So I'm using the directions, and I am supposed to be marking these, I think, at like 2 1/4. I did it wrong, but I call myself marking these according to the directions. And basically these marks are just to be sure that your actual seatbelt closure is in the center of this piece. I needed eighths. I couldn't see the eighths great with my creative grids, so I went ahead and grabbed this. I think this is a Fisker's ruler. I have so many rulers at this point, guys, and I love that I have them because I use them. When I find that I need a ruler for something larger or smaller, I go grab it. I have it. I might as well. But it's not necessary to have 25, 30 different rulers. You can certainly do the things that I do with basically this one right here. You're definitely going to need a 6.5 by 24 ruler, and then maybe a smaller one. You can get away with it in a mat and a cutting mat. But I have them, so I change rulers often. It's fun. I like it. And my preference are creative grids rulers. Even though I was having a heck of a time with this particular project, nothing came out right, at least to the appropriate size. I don't know what kind of stuff I was doing. Something that I learned from this project was working with fusible interfacing. I really like it. It gives your fabric such body, and I'm loving it. This pattern calls for Velcro, also called hook and loop tape. At this point, this is when I realized I'm using sticky back, and I should have been using sew on. So I had to stop, run to Joann's, and get the proper Velcro because there was no way that I was going to put my needle through this. I was like, my needle's going to get gummy. It's going to be gross. I'm thinking about it. I'm realizing it probably right now. Like, wait, what? Because when you see the video, you see that she's sewing it on. With that sticky Velcro, there was no place to sew. And so I ran back to the store, realized I had gotten the wrong ones. I got the ones that say sew on, and all is right with the world. Lost a little time and momentum, but oh well. Now there are a series of marks that you make on your fabric to let you know where to put the Velcro. And even though my actual panel did not come out the proper size, as long as I followed basically, I usually sew more than a 1/4 inch, which makes everything a little bit smaller than it's supposed to be. But this worked out fine. I just stayed with it. I panicked once I realized that it was smaller, but it all worked itself out. So yay. Something else that I learned is to use a blind hem foot, which has like a guard on it that can be adjusted. And I quite enjoyed using that when I was sewing down this Velcro. Another suggestion that she makes is that sewing with a polyester thread versus a cotton works better with Velcro. So I switched to a poly thread. That was my thread box, which is ridiculous. Don't worry. I purchased an art bin specifically for thread to keep my thread bin looking better than that because that was terrible. But, oh well. So I'm marking the Velcro according to the instructions. I want to say it's probably like a 7.5-inch piece. And I'm doing both of these in black, and I still have some Velcro left over. So you could probably do another one, maybe two with that one Velcro pack. And again, this is polyester thread that I'm using. I'm using a little bit of glue here just to tack it down. I focus the glue down the center of the piece, not the edges. Not that I would have a problem sewing through this particular glue. It's a water-soluble glue. And that's the blind hem foot that I was telling you about. I've never used that foot before. Not even exactly sure how you're supposed to use it. But this let me hit the same spot twice without you even being able to detect it on the back. Watch, I'll show you. I was like, wait, did I go around twice? You're supposed to go around twice. I did go around twice. See there, you can see it. I'm like, did I? I had to actually separate the threads with my finger to be sure on the bottom. I was like, did I? But I did. It's just, I hit the same spot. That made me very happy. It's so rare that I can get a decent top stitch. My top stitching game is weak. More fusible goes on the back of some of these pieces. This particular tutorial does a great job of walking you through it. She has step-by-step video for this entire process, which is great. There are some videos by Annie that only offer you what she considers the more difficult aspects of what you're doing, and that is considerably more difficult because I don't always understand what they're talking about when you're just reading it. But to see it, perfect. So this is definitely a beginner-friendly project because of that. She walks you through every single aspect a few times. She's got a couple of different videos on this. She talks about how you need to center if you're using a directional fabric or something that you want to fussy cut. And I was actually, even though this came out smaller, it all worked out perfectly. I know sometimes when you're working on a project and you realize that the dimensions are not the same in the middle of the project, you want to abandon it. I worked through it. I panicked, but I worked through it and it still worked out. That tool to the left is a clapper. Love it. It really does make a difference with your seams. I think I'm using it properly. You steam your stuff and then you lay that on there and then give it a minute and it really flattens your seams. Not sure if that's exactly how you're supposed to use it. I was wondering if you're supposed to tap it on your fabric because I call it a clapper, but I'll Google it at some point. So I'm going around, I've laid these the way that they said to lay them, and I'm going around and I'm sewing it. And somehow, when I turn this, I don't know, it just got super small. And I thought I was sewing a pretty consistent 1/8 when they said 1/8, 1/4 when they said 1/4. But obviously I was wrong. One of these is for my husband. One of these is for me. He saw that I was making it. He was like, I said, well, do you want one? And he says, yes. So I said, okay, cool. And his came out oval and mine came out the right shape. Isn't that a trip? I bought these small creative grids rulers. They range from 2.5 to 6.5. They're circular and I love them. I would not have been able to do these projects probably without them. That's not true. You can use a paper template, but I probably would have lost some fingers in the process. Acrylic rulers really help you keep your fingers because those rotary cutters are no joke. I will probably use these little circle things constantly. I certainly have been using them with my recent projects for whatever reason. She talks about stitching 1/8 away. I'm really not good at stitching 1/8 away or a quarter away from anything on a curve at this point in my sewing career. So what I do is sew pretty much close to the line, and then instead of cutting on the line, I cut a little bit shorter. So that way I'm not cutting through the stitches that I've just shown. So now I'm trying to give myself a guide to sew so that I don't jump in too much because that's where I went wrong on my husband. So I am marking a 1/4 inch away just by putting the 1/4 inch line and then working my way around that curve. So that way, when I turn it, I'm not losing the shape of these corners. And it kind of worked, actually. I didn't have a huge problem. You have to slow down. I am not known for slowing down. I want to just go, go, go because I'm always thinking about my next project and trying to get through whatever I'm doing. So I'm clipping threads. That's something that I've really gotten much better with. I used to just leave threads everywhere, and it really makes a difference in how clean your piece comes out, and your long armors will love you. One of the techniques that she uses is to pinch it and then cut notches as opposed to just cutting toward your seam. However, this was taking forever and I did not love what was happening with this curve. So I went ahead and clipped to it the way that I usually do, and that worked out just fine. Cutting those notches out was just a pain in the butt. I need new scissors. Those are dull or sharpen. I need to sharpen those. So when you turn this, it's thick. It's got that interfacing on there. It feels very well constructed. It's just not flimsy at all. That interfacing makes a huge difference. I'm so glad to have found interfacing. I'm wondering what else I can really use it with to give your fabric some body and some serious stability. I'm using a Purple Thang tool, even though it's not purple, it's like a knockoff Purple Thang, to push out those edges. And this, I think, is when I started panicking. I realized that what the dimensions were that they said that it should be and mine were off by they were off by exactly a 1/4 inch on each side. And oh, my little heart just broke for a moment, but I stayed with it and I kept going. So I'm doing lots of marking here, and this is to sew it down to the padding. This is what's going to actually circle around your seatbelt. And it still worked. I don't know why it worked, but it did. Everything seemed to be centered pretty much, and I was good with that. I'm using the Sew Line chalk marker here, or chalk pencil. I really like it. Really like that pencil. And it seemed like it was going to be too thin, but it works out perfectly. And that Velcro, you can really tug on it and still feel, it doesn't feel like it's going to come off or like you didn't sew it down good enough. So I had to draw a couple of lines. I had to draw them over again to make sure that it was centered. I don't know what kind of measuring I was doing, but something was off. These rulers sometimes get confusing because there's so many markings on them. And one direction are whole numbers and the other direction are half numbers. And some of these rulers are just eighths, and it just gets confusing. So really be careful with your rulers, and maybe just have a regular ruler in your quilting area too. I wish I had a Tim Holtz ruler in here. Matter of fact, I need Tim Holtz to come out with a quilt ruler. How about that? That would be great. So I'm supposed to round these edges too, and I did, but for whatever reason, my husband's came out way more oval than mine, which annoyed me, but it's my first time trying stuff, and you don't always get it right on the first try. I certainly don't. And I'm marking mine. Look at how the pandas lined up. I wish that I had known where they were going to go height-wise. I would have fussy cut them a little differently, but you still get at least one full panda right down the center. And now I'm cutting around those corners. And it looks great thus far. Right now, we're cooking with gas. Everything looks pretty, even though it turns out that the seatbelt part should have been a little bit longer and a little bit wider. It still looks good. Now I need to make some bias binding. I chose to do continuous bias binding because that is my preferred method. By Annie suggests that you cut a bunch of strips and then join all the strips, and it definitely gives a cleaner look. I just don't love it. So I take a square, cut it in half, and then I measure 2.5 inches. I'm trying to get the little tips to line up here. Sew down, press it open, and now I'm measuring 2.25 inch strips. That's what she suggests. She likes a nice tight binding. I do too. And then this last one here, you can just cut that one away. Just cut that sucker right away. And you only have 3 strips here. I offset them. I pin them. I sew down the line that I pinned. They should technically over intersect a 1/4 inch down, and mine do. It feels really weird because basically you make a tube and it feels really strange when you're sewing it because it doesn't just lay flat, but just stay with it, go with it. Then you're going to press open that little area right there. I didn't press mine open, but you should press that open. And then just cut through the tube little by little, and you'll get one continuous binding strip. And now I'm just checking to make sure that the binding will go all the way around, and it will. She suggests pinning all the way because you supposedly get a smoother binding. Poppycock. No, press it. Well, for me, I need to press it. She makes her stuff work and her stuff comes out beautifully. And at this point, I just can't. Oh, really? We're going to sew upside down this time. Okay, so now that we're right side up, again, she is able to make this work. When I use pins, one, I hurt myself like every time. And I just was not able to get as smooth. I wasn't comfortable. It wasn't as smooth as she said that it would be. But again, it works for her. Non-pressing and pinning does not work for me. This was a mess, but I think I'm just annoyed because this was already coming out. The shape was wrong. I call myself trying to use my stitching. It just was funky. I tried to use my little guard and it just did not come out perfect. I already don't like to top stitch and trying to figure out what foot to use. I think that blind hem foot would have been a good foot to try to keep a consistent top stitch. But this one came out much better than my husband's, but it is not perfect. His is again oval. That annoys me. But mine came out a little better. It's still totally usable. I could probably give mine as a gift and not be, embarrassed about it at all. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you've tried this. Let me know if you think this is beginner friendly. And I will see you again on the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.